6 years in a row as the best UK restaurant. So it doesn't really get any better than this. One of the great. He's downstairs.
No pressure.
Absolutely. So anyway, one of the great advantages of our partnership really is having given the opportunity to take over the restaurant for the day. And I remember talking back in the up saying, what do we do with it? And we decided instead of just throwing kind of a big corporate event for corporate fat cats, and just realized, oh crap, pun that is still a pun. But actually we decided just invite our most valued customers, and that is why you're here. I think sometimes brands get so obsessed about chasing new customers that they neglect the customers that actually made them success along the way. So today is really a big thank you to all of you. Is that what you enjoy yourself? There's not a single salesman in sight, unless any of you actually. but not from JW, really. And so enjoy your day. Enjoy kind of being in Heston's company, and it's a big thank you to all of you. A big thank you to you, Heston, for hosting us in your house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just I thought what I'd do is just give you a bit of a preamble of how I kind of got here, how I kind of felt like ended up where it is today. And it's quite an unconventional story because I left. First, I'm not a scientist. I mean, my basic science is okay. I failed my O-level chemistry. I got an A-level in art. That was a fluke. Three of the four artists that came up for my art history were ones I revised about 3 days before. So anyway, I was born in London and in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, and for those of you who remember, food wasn't exactly Britain or London's best forte, and in fact, there was a G7 summit meeting in Glen Eagles in Scotland years ago, and I think Chirac, I don't know if any of you guys remember, he made a comment that Britain has the worst food in Europe, second only to Finland. So at the risk of offending any, at the risk of upsetting any Finnish people, that's a pretty bad insult. It was also really, can't wind me up about it, but within 2 weeks of that, London was fighting it out with Paris for the Olympics. And I don't know if you remember, but subsequent to Jacques Chirac's comments, the two Finnish representatives pulled their votes from Paris to London. So I maintain that it was our food that got us in. It was sticking together. Yeah. But in fact, if you talk about the 70s, he was probably right. And I remember growing up in London. My mum was and is a good cook, very good cook. But in those days, there was only one type of pasta you could buy from the supermarket, and it was the spaghetti in the blue wrapper, and olive oil you had to buy from the chemist. Can you believe this? Olive oil from the farm. And it was the decade that saw the launch of the basket meal, which is one of the most ludicrous food concepts. So someone said, somebody's going to revolutionise the way we eat food in Britain. You go, sit down and take a plate and throw it away. And replace it with a cheap and nasty imitation with a basket. And put fried food in it with a couple of sachets of ketchup, and it's going to call it the basket meal. You go, this is never going to take on. Oh, yeah, right, anyway, so then in my mid-teens, we went to France for a holiday. My dad had read about this 3 Michelin-star restaurant. His business had done quite well at the time. My folks had never been to a 1 Michelin-star, let alone 3-star. And they decided to sort of splash out and go and have this experience in France. And I was lucky enough to have the same first-time kind of Michelin experience as they had. And I remember it so clearly. Bear in mind, at the time, I don't even knew what an oyster looked like. I certainly never eaten one before. And I think because of that experience has such a massive impact on me. This restaurant, so I think it's 2 stars now, 2 or 1, but it's set in this valley of olive trees at the foot of a bauxite cliff. There's a sunset that cliff kind of lit up at night, and you heard this overwhelming sound of crickets. And I remember some shaded terrace outside this proper-style farmhouse, and there was the noise of a fountain running in the background. And you had the noise of the crickets, the smell of lavender, and I remember things like even the noise of the gravel, the waiting staff's feet crunching on the gravel, and the sommelier with his big handlebar moustache and leather apron, and the wine list that was like a billboard, so it seemed like that big. I mean, I wasn't that big. And the cheese trolley that was the size of a chariot, and they were pouring sauces into soufflés and carving legs of lamb at the table. I've never seen any of this before. The wine glasses seemed really big. And that was it. It was as if I'd fallen down some kind of rabbit hole into a wonderland. And then I got hooked. And it's quite interesting. Over the years, as I was telling that story, I found myself explaining, talking more about all of the sensory triggers and memories, more so than the food I ate. Although I could remember exactly what I ordered and what I ate, but it was the whole package. And I'm convinced that the combination of that ending up with duck, which is a very small, I don't have a bauxite cliff and a load of lavender, I don't have thin in the air and a sort of shaded olive. I'm convinced that that memory is that strong, the whole kind of this multi-sensory approach to cooking that developed, which was quite unique. I think because I didn't have that formal training. It was a combination of that and that memory really driving me forward, and the idea that food can be such an emotional trigger. And so anyway, from there I then just got obsessed with all things food, and I spent all my money, saved up for months into my late teens and 20s, would save up and then either spend it on cookbooks and blow out a 2-week trip to France each year, and eat in restaurants, go to some winemakers, cheesemakers, farmers. It was weird because I would never have called myself methodical at all. I was never really that inquisitive. But as I read more and more from the sort of great chefs of France, their recipes, I was becoming increasingly more frustrated. So you look at a chef's recipe for vanilla ice cream, 20 different books, 20 different recipes, and some chefs would use whole eggs, some would use yolks, some would use sugar, some would use glucose, some would use whole cream, some or double cream, some single cream, some mascarpone, some semi-skim milk, some skim milk, full fat milk, etc., etc. You think, well, why do you need all these ingredients? The differences in the recipes because the chefs know that they're using these ingredients for a particular reason, or is it just that the recipe's been handed down like that? So I started getting interested in the mechanics of ice cream making. So why do you put sugar in ice cream? Is it just because taste, or does it do something to the texture? Then, mid-80s, I bought a book written by an American guy called Harold McGee, which is about the science of cooking, not food science, which is something you go to university to get a degree in biosciences and you maybe go and work for an ice cream company on the structure of ice creams. This was why do eggs make the soufflés right? And in this book, Harold made this comment that browning meat doesn't keep in the juices. And this flew in the face of everything I'd learned to then. And then he explains why, and it's really obvious. So you put steak in a pan, hot pan, what happens? Yeah, what do you hear? Sizzles. Oils and sizzle.
Yeah.
So meat's about, well, beef is round about this kind of steaks that we get in the supermarket, 70% water. So what's happening is you put the meat in the pan, it sizzles because the juices are coming out. So, and if it was possible to keep the juices in by browning the steak, it would be impossible to have a brown, well-done steak. Because the juices, well, they'd stay in there, but they don't. A well-done steak is a third of the weight, or a third less weight and size, but a rare steak. And you can taste it, you can see it, the colour changes. Anyway, from this point, that's when I went back and everything I'd learned and just started asking questions. I looked like those annoying kids at school, and they're, why? And I wasn't scared to say I didn't know something. So by the time the duck opened, and I'd already had a sort of repertoire of recipes that I'd worked on, and it was looking at the textures of creme brulee. My first ever recipe was in fact 1993. That was 2 years before the duck, and it was triple cooked chips, and it was the whole thing of trying to get this sort of the crispiest chip. Anyway, we opened there 16th of August, I remember this really clearly, 1995, and just before the opening, I had some friends. We did most of the refurb ourselves. We've done the restaurant up since then, but I had friends take time off work. There was a skip outside, and we were a couple of days away from the opening. And this wheelbarrow of rubble, getting rid of the old barn, he's chucking the bricks and stuff into the skip. And this old lady walked past and she had a headscarf and a walking stick. She said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I thought, this is great. I'm now starting to get some connection with the villagers. And I said, well, we're going to open a bistro, because that was my ambition, was bistro, and maybe one day in my life I get a Michelin star. That was my ambition, or one of them. Never any more than that. Anyway, I said, you can come in, you sit at the bar, you can have a pint of Guinness and some oysters, you can have pate and a glass of red wine, etc., etc. She looked at me and there's this half grin. I thought, oh, this is really last. Feeling I'm starting to become a villager. Anyway, she said, we've had 3 owners in 5 years. She picked a walking stick up and said, we closed them down, and we're going to close you down.
Madame Rue.
Oh dear. We got rich off Bray.
And then within the same week, I had a letter from Bray Parish Council saying, welcome to Bray. And I thought, oh, isn't that nice? And then we wish you every success in your new venture. Yes. And then, however, in capital letters, we feel the name isn't suitable for the village.
Uh-oh.
And then one of the villagers went, well, you know what they think, and he said, what you really wanted to do was swap the F and the D around. Never, ever occurred to me. But I thought, if that's what you're thinking, then stuff a lot of your calling the fat duck. And I'm still a more romantic kind of story.
You just ruined it for the whole every time.
But and so we opened, and God, it was so, and that was my first proper job, my first paid job as a chef was the duck, which in some respects was a blessing in disguise, because it meant I didn't have anybody telling me what was and wasn't possible, and that inquisitive approach I took carried on through the formative years of the duck. The downside was, because of that lack of experience, things like ordering, at the end of the evening I look at the fridge and go, oh, what do we need? In fact,
ordering.
Control, all the systems that are in place. I didn't have that, so what happened is a chef's job is hard enough anyway. But those first 5 to 8 years, I was probably working 120 hours a week, and there were levels of exhaustion I didn't even know possible. And I remember thinking, oh God, trying to light a blowtorch with a hot tap. So if anyone's done that, then well, congratulations. And I remember thinking, turning the gas on, thinking, walking over, it's like probably Alice in Wonderland story, going,